Yes, we're going to start here with unboxing our product. We bought it from Amazon. It was on sale, so I thought, why not? I have a dash cam on my Street Glide. Unfortunately, that is out of stock, and they didn't know when it was going to come in, so I was looking at this other dash cam, and I liked all the options that it came with, so I decided to go ahead and get it installed on my Road King Classic, my 2002 Road King Classic. The first thing I'm looking at here is the brackets for the display. There's a display in my hand. And as you can see, if I installed the display, I went ahead and installed it. It's not that complicated. You're just screwing the bolts in. It didn't go exactly where I wanted it because my handlebars were so thick, but I thought this was a perfect spot. I'm going to look at the rear mirror anyway, so it doesn't interfere with that. And it's kind of right in a position where you can look at it without looking down, which is one of the downsides of the Road King, is you have to look down at everything. So there's the bracket put together, installed. Now what I'm doing, this is an option you don't necessarily have to do. I wrapped the 3 cords or 4 cords that I'm going to run underneath the gas tank. I didn't take my gas tank off because I've done it 100 times and I didn't feel like doing it again. So I actually pulled a wire underneath and pulled it through. But what I did is taped all the wires together with some black electrical tape, basically just for some extra insulation. Gives it a little more protection and keeps the cords nice and clean put together. And again, I ran it as far down so that the wire that ran underneath the gas tank through to the headlight would be taped together and some extra insulation. And I even went a little bit extra down to close to where the battery was. As you can see, I'm lining it up. I'm still wrapping some more. I want to make sure it's got extra insulation. We're getting close to the rainy season in San Diego, that limited amount of rain that we get. I want to make sure that and the morning dew doesn't mess up any of my wires. Plus running it underneath the tank, since I'm not taking the tank off. The best option would have been to take the tank off and run the wires, but I figured if I could do the same thing without taking the tank off, that's one less headache. Now we're on to the headlight, where we're going to run we've already ran the wires from the battery out to the headlight, where you have to loop it back up through the handlebars. Right now I'm just setting in the front camera. Later in the video you'll see the results, and you'll see that the camera sets just a little too high. And this part, I just ran some zip ties on it just to kind of hold it in place on the bar. And I'm doing the same thing there. I'm taping where the connector goes for the front camera. All the connectors I added some black electrical tape on, just a little added insulation. I'm going to pull the wires through there. Later what I did is I went and got some hose clamps, because they're silver and they blend in a little better, and I bent the bracket for the front camera. I bent the bracket a little more rounded so it kind of goes around that bar, and then I use some hose clamps to put it on there. That way it's going to stay in place. It's going to stay there for a long time. I zip tied some of the extra wires that were together, looped them together, just because that the headlight, there's a lot of wires already there. You want to try to keep them as clean and together as you can. I had to wait for some plugs. The last wire was the accessory wire. I had to order the plug on Amazon too to go into the accessory wire. So what you see me doing now is basically putting the plug in there, make sure it's nice and firm. It's a four pin plug, one for accessories. One is a little switch that's right there behind the handlebars, which I don't have anything hooked up, and I'm not sure what the other 2 wires are for. But what I'm going to do here is take the 3 wires I'm not using. I'm putting electrical tape on the ends of them just for added protection, and then I'm going to take electrical tape and tape all 3 of those wires together. Again, keeps them together, out of the way. Not really necessary, but if you like to keep your wires clean and together like I do, then you want to take that extra step. So the package that I bought, I believe it was like a pack of 4 or 6. I only needed the one, but it was cheap enough I can keep those other plugs for another project. Here I'm basically running the tester on the accessory. You see when I turn the switch off, that turns the power off to that accessory wire. Just confirming that I have the correct wire before I tape everything together. Basically bought some connectors that have the little metal in the inside, so when you put the wires together and you heat that wire, it melts the metal on the inside and clinches them together, gives you a good connection. So here I'm just trimming the edges of the wire. I'm basically trimming the plug wire now. Now I'm going to go back to the wire that goes to the camera, cut the end because it has the little C hook on the end, or the C connector. I don't need it anymore, so I've cut the end of it off, clean the wire on the end, and now I'm going to run the 2 connectors together and then take my heat gun and heat shrink it together. And then what I like to do, you don't necessarily have to do, is add a little extra insulation over the wire. So I'll put the insulation on once I heat shrink the connector together. I'll run the heat sleeve on top of that once it cools down and then heat shrink that. It basically just gives it a little more added strength to keep the wires together, and again, a little added insulation to keep any the weather from getting to it, or basically the bikes vibrate, so you don't want it vibrating too much and pulling those wires apart. I think the heat gun was one of the best investments I have because I use that thing regularly and it helps. So once these wires are together, I'll put the seat back on and then we'll test it out. So here what you see is me turning the ignition on to make sure that it does power up, which it did. So I'm just letting it cool down. Then I'm going to put the insulation on top of it. And again, like I said, I add that extra element that you don't really need. It's just I like to have it because it adds a little more strength to it. You can also go on Amazon and buy like kits with all different sizes of the insulations, which is what I did. And if you're like me and sometimes forget to do it, you can always cut one side, cut a line down, put the insulation on, and kind of overlap it and heat it, and it'll bond itself back together. Here's the end product at night. Again, I had to wait for the plug, so it took me a little longer. That's kind of the display is on. Unfortunately, it wasn't. I hadn't done the settings yet, but here's after the settings are done. You can see the time at the top left, but you'll see the front and the back. And then here's the front camera with the hose clamps on it. I still need to adjust it, as you can see in the video. It's facing up a little bit more than I want it. So when I tighten down those hose clamps, I move the camera down just a little bit after seeing that video. And then here's the back. It's just 2-face tape on there right now.